Hello, my name is Prisha, and I'm the Chief Science Officer from the East Valley Cabinet of Arizona. And I'm also the Chief Science Officer at Hamilton High School. And so, as a Chief Science Officer, we spread STEM awareness in our community. And so, one of the amazing opportunities that I've been able to do is be part of the Green Drone Arizona program. And along with that, I've also had some other projects that I was able to do, like create an artificial intelligence-based wildfire prevention, detection, and suppression system. And I think that it has been an amazing journey, and I'm so glad that I got to like work with the Green Drone program. And so today I am here interviewing Miss Jami Dennis. She has over 25 years of experience in GIS, socioeconomic research, demographic studies, data analysis, and data visualization. Her background also includes extensive experience in GIS for transportation, census, and other federal government data products. Jami spent over 25 years working in state and regional government and now provides GIS and data analysis services in private practice as co-owner of Geodetic Analysis LLC. She serves as co-chair for the Arizona Geographic Information Council Conference Committee and is also the co-founder of the Arizona chapter for Women in GIS. Hi, Jami, and thank you so much for being on the call with us today.
Thanks for having me. That was a lot.
Yeah, I agree. But I think that it's a great way for us to get to know you. So today I have a couple of questions that I would like to ask you. So I would like to start by asking you, what led to your interest in GIS technology? And tell us your story.
Well, that's a great question. I think, when you ask people that are in GIS this question, I hear this a lot. Usually we all say the same thing. It's because we love maps. And we started out that way. Well, my map story goes way back in the early 90s. I'm aging myself real fast, but anyway, I got this job at the state, and it was as a research assistant. And I remember the interview. My boss at the time, her name was, or the woman interviewing me, she's asking me all these questions, and then she takes me into this room. Alongside of there's these big metal cabinets. And she pulls out this long drawer, and there's these maps in there. And they were the coolest thing. There was like these maps, and I thought, oh, I got to have this job. So, so I did a good job interviewing, I guess. I fell in love with that, and I got all excited about the maps, and she hired me. And so I was a research assistant, and then worked with census data and all this, and I wasn't working in GIS yet. GIS wasn't really around. But several years later, I was promoted, and I was doing population projections, determining the population. And we get this new computer in the office, and it's called the GIS system. And I was a techie nerd. I loved all this nerdy stuff. And so I jumped up and said, oh, I want to do this. I want to do this. And so they sent me to training, and I learned the GIS, and I worked on some really cool stuff. And then I met a guy that worked for the Department of Transportation for the state. And he loved GIS as well, and he hired me away. And so I went and I worked for the Department of Transportation, and we did some cool stuff there. We got to do all kinds of mapping with, we mapped crash data, where accidents are along the highway. And we did some analysis of, when you hit a deer or something on the road, there's all these data on there. And we looked to see where we could help to mitigate that, to stop avoiding these crashes, and help to do a big project that involved building wildlife corridors so that they could safely pass the freeways. And so it was pretty cool. That was a great job. I also got to learn more about GIS because Tony, who was my mentor, the guy that hired me there, he had me teach GIS. So I got to teach some courses. I got to teach coworkers. I got to teach some high school kids, and I got to teach even some little kids. Sometimes I would go to elementary schools and share it with them. So it was pretty fun, and I really loved it. And anyway, one thing came to another, and there was a time I had to leave that job. I had a boss that wasn't so great, But anyway, so I moved on, and I knew enough people in the Arizona GIS community that I was able to move into another job that I loved, working for the Regional Council of Governments. And I did some GIS work there. That's why I fell in love with data visualization. Got to do more about that and do some programming, some more nerdy techie stuff. And then recently, I'm trying to not make this too long, but then I had put in 25 years in public service, so working for the state and working for the Regional Council of Governments. So I was able to retire, if you will, and now I'm doing private consulting work where I still get to work with a lot of these great people and do a lot of cool projects. And so that's kind of the base, my quick story, I guess, quick but long.
No, yeah, that's actually really cool. And so I like heard you were talking about like data maps and like how you did the map with the deer. So how do you guys even collect this data? And then like how would you analyze it?
Oh, that's a great question. So that one specifically, the data came from actually the crash information with crashes involving wild game with deer, elk, whatever. That came from, it starts with the Highway Patrol who investigates the incident. They fill out a report, and that report would go into a system, accident location information surveillance system or something like that. It has an acronym. It spells out the word Alice. So we just say Alice, like a lady's name. Anyway, and so it would go into that system, and we were able to tap into that. And each one of those would have a location reference. So GIS is about data, but it's also about a location. And so it would have a location where along the highway system, and it would reference it to, have you seen it when you drive around the freeway, down the freeway, it has like little green signs with a number on it?
Yeah.
A mile post. Okay. So those are a mile marker. We call them a reference marker. And so the police officers know where that location was based on the distance from one of those mile markers. And using the GIS, we could take that data and map it. And then you can see where there's clusters and where there's different types of wild game and where there's an issue. So it's pretty cool. And in some cases, when I was at the DOT, there was a natural resources section that also had a lot of data on trees and growth along the highways. So if there's a lot of vegetation that was blocking view, so like the deer would dash out and you can't see it because there's all this vegetation, they would go and maybe trim that back to make it safer so that drivers could see the deer or the elk crossing. And so it was collecting data that way, a lot of it. We also had a van that drove the highway system and collected the actual center lines for where the highway actually is and those reference markers.
Oh, wow. That's really cool. I never knew that that's like one, what the mileposts are used for. And then two, I always wondered like why they left like a good amount of like on the side of the road. And like when you go to the forest and stuff, like why it's just always empty with like just a little bit of grass. And like now I know it's so that way you can see an animal if they're like trying to cross the road.
A lot of times, yes, that's why.
Yeah, that's really cool. So what are like some of the coolest projects that you've worked on with GIS technology? Like I know you've done the one with the deer, but
that one was cool. Oh geez, there's a lot. So yeah, so early on in my career, before there was Google Maps, one of the coolest jobs I got when I first went to the DOT was Tony was great because he knew I had this like enthusiasm for everything nerdy and techie. And Google Maps wasn't around. There wasn't anything like that. And we didn't have any sort of way to look at our data or to share it with other people. And we got this whole computer set up. It was called an internet map server. And it was basically like a Google Maps. And we could put maps like that thing with the deer and put that on there. And I got to go into the big server computer room and put that in there and set up the whole internet system and the maps. So we were doing that before we had the Google Maps. That was super cool then. But nowadays, there's even more stuff. Technology keeps evolving and it's so cool to watch it. And you get to the stuff you're doing is amazing. The drone stuff, the fire suppression. A cool project that I did recently was I used some satellite data. And from Landsat, I don't know if you're familiar with what that is. It's a survey. Okay, so I got some Landsat data and I was doing a project to determine the effects of urbanization on South Mountain Park. there in Phoenix, South Mountain Park, the big mountain there in the south side of town, and to see how it had changed over time. So I've got like 25, 30 years worth as far back as I could go with Landsat data. And I was able to do some analysis based on to see how the land cover and the vegetation had changed over time. And that was really cool because using the GIS, you can see that. You can do some analysis based on how it has changed and see the vegetation, the cover. That was really cool, being able to play with the data. There's a lot of cool stuff going on. And that was one of them. So I really like that one.
Yeah, that's really cool. So like when you say you visualize the data, like how do you guys visualize it? Because normally we think of numbers as like data. I mean, like data as numbers, and just like a spreadsheet of just a bunch of numbers. So like, how do you guys see the data?
That's a good question. So, with GIS, you're converting these into a map, and you're putting it into a map, something pretty that you can see. But other data visualization means like charts, a simple chart, a bar chart, a line chart, something like that. But you can make those and you can create them, but part of data visualization is making it understandable and making it so that somebody can easily see it and understand. So you'll see them in newspapers and in articles in magazines. You'll see some really neat charts, and they're simple. And there's kind of like an art to trying to make it simple without overly complicating it. As a data nerd person, you want to put everything on there and show all this stuff, but sometimes that's not the best way to do it. And so when I say data visualization, I mean like making it into a story or something simple and easy for someone to understand. That's kind of what I mean.
Yeah, and some of the ways that I've also seen like the data visualization is where they have like a map, and then it's kind of like the infrared, like where the different colors will symbolize like different numbers. Yeah.
And the different, so you can see the heat index and you can see the vegetation types and all that sort of thing.
Yeah.
There's really neat ways. Other ways that you can do things now, there's story maps, and the cool project I worked on was doing I was looking at wetlands in Northern California and Southern Oregon. It's a place called the Klamath Basin. And there was some information there. The wetlands has, over the past couple hundred years, has been decimated. They were drained. Climate change affected it. So they're like 90% of what they once were. And there's all these water birds, ducks, grebes, birds that are dependent on water, the wetland area for habitat. And there used to be millions and millions of them, and now there's only like 100,000, even less now because the drought is so bad. And so I went through the history, and it was really cool to learn the history of this whole area, because it involves more than just climate change. It also involves changing the landscape for agriculture, for what we did and what humans did to it. And so it's really interesting. And I was able to tell that story with data. I showed the data, the change in the number of water birds in the area, which showed the chart, so I had a line chart, but I also showed photos. I had old photos that showed what it used to be and talked about how it changed. And I had a map that showed how they rerouted the water by building dams and changing it that way. And so you can use a lot of combination of different visuals to tell a story, and data's all part of it. So,
Yeah, that's actually really cool. Yeah. So then I guess one of the other questions that I had is like, how do you recommend that we increase awareness about some of the amazing works and like the field that you do in like GIS technology? Because as chief science officers, we do want to like spread awareness of the different careers. And I feel like after listening to everything you said, GIS is really, really cool.
There's a lot of things you can do with it. What do you guys do now? Do you have clubs? Do you meet regularly? Do you have information sessions for people that aren't in the club?
Yeah, so as chief science officers, we have cabinet meetings where we meet like regularly in the spring and in the fall. And then in between, there's like other events. But then like we also have an action plan at our school. So depending on the person, some people will start a club, some people will have a career fair, some people will invite a Zoom, like a professional over like a Zoom call and to speak to like their peers. So it really just depends on the person.
Well, that's pretty cool. So somebody like for GIS, I can tell you that in November, the week of National Geography Week, the Wednesday of that, it's usually the Wednesday, I think it is this year too, is GIS Day. And so the whole week is National Geography Week, but there's also GIS Day in the middle of that. And I think it's November 16th, 15th or 16th this year. And a lot of schools get involved in that. Teachers can do that, get involved in it. And there's a website, gisday.com, and you can go there and get some marketing materials and some information about GIS and share that with your school. And you can invite people, GIS professionals from your community to come in and speak to the school too. It's pretty cool. So that's one way you could help share the information and get people interested in what GIS does. Also is if you have fellow students that are doing things, have you presented your project to kids at your school already?
Yeah, so like that was one of my action plans as well, like telling people about it and like showing that there's so many opportunities that and like things that you can do. And so I actually started a club called Astralis. It's a research and innovation club where basically I'm helping my peers if they have any ideas of inventions that they want to create. I'm basically helping them build those out. So one of like the projects we've been working on, or like one of the things that we've been like focusing on is really how can we solve problems that we like see in the school and in the community. So one of the coolest things that I feel like that we've been doing so far is we actually are creating a semi-automated attendance system because right now the teachers manually have to take attendance, right? So we're trying to see, okay, if we scan the school like student IDs, then it'll automatically mark you as here or mark you as tardy. So that way it doesn't take up that precious class time. And if the teacher forgets, it's not a big deal. Yeah.
That's cool. That's really neat. I'm surprised they don't have that automated already.
Yeah, I know, right? It's like one of the things that I was just like, even with computers, it's like we don't have one-on-one computers. So that's one of the things that like, yeah, we can like definitely improve that. But yeah. And I guess one of my next questions kind of like piggybacks off of like what we've been talking about. So you have like founded the Women in GIS chapter for Arizona. And so like what kind of work do you do there? Is it similar to like your regular job or like how do you like what do you do?
So what that is it's actually a support network for women that work in the GIS field in anything geospatial. And so we do, it's all volunteer run. And so what we do is we have a monthly meetup via Zoom. It's called Mugs and Mornings. So it's in the morning on the last Friday of the month at 8. And it's really informal. What that is mostly, and sometimes we don't even talk shop. Sometimes we don't talk technology. Most times we don't. We just kind of meet up and it's just kind of a way to connect with each other and get to know more people in our field. And then we have a quarterly meeting where we do something more formal. We'll invite someone to do a presentation, maybe something for professional development. We had something on interviewing skills one time, or we'll have someone come and do some tips and tricks on like a new software or, it would be great if we had like you come to one of our meetings and share what you do. So would you be willing to do that?
Yeah, that would be amazing.
So I think that would be great. So those are some of the things we do. We also have a book club. People meet virtually once a month and we pick out a book and read a book, and then we talk about it once a month. And what else do we do? I think I might have a little list here. We promote, so there's a national chapter for women in GIS it's actually international. And that one has a mentorship program. I'm involved in that as well. So we connect people, a mentor and a mentee, and you meet up and help each other. And so that's pretty cool. And there's also regular meetups on that one as well. So it's a networking and professional development type organization. It's pretty cool. And I'm holding you to that to come and talk to our group.
Yeah. No, and I think that's also really cool because it's like now you all have like formed a community and a network of like people who are in GIS technology. So it's really cool because everyone has similar interests. Yeah.
And sometimes, with our quarterly meetings, we'll have some interesting stuff. We don't limit it to just women, so anybody can come. Men have showed up at our Friday morning ones, but they don't really feel comfortable, so they usually leave. But I mean, we don't men bash or anything like that. It's just they're the only guy in the room, so they kind of feel awkward for some reason. But we're welcoming to anybody that wants to come. But it is mainly for women. But.
Yeah. Yeah, that is cool. And I think it's also like a great way to build a network too. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then my last question for today is, if you had any advice that you would give to students our age, or even yourself a little bit like in the past, what would it be?
That's a great question. Well, I think I would say, first and foremost, enjoy what you do. You may not start out getting that dream job that you held, but enjoy it and always keep your eyes open for every opportunity. I got into GIS because I jumped for the opportunity because I was enthusiastic and I love it and do that. And sometimes you might need to know when it's time to move on. Sadly, I told you briefly about when I was at the Department of Transportation, and I had a boss who, he ended up getting fired later after I left, but he was just not good. And I knew I had to move on. Unfortunately, it was a job I loved, but this timing wasn't right. Things weren't right. So you had to move on, and that could happen. So you just need to know that. But, don't let that get you down. Move on. And most importantly, be curious. Never stop learning, and don't be afraid to keep asking questions. And you'll just keep finding what you love and do what you love. And I think that's the best thing.
Yeah, I think that's like perfect advice too, because I think that like keep asking questions. Like that's one of the things that we should all like do. And that's like how we learn so much. And I think that's like really amazing. Yeah.
Right. I had a boss that said, he was a really great boss. And he always said, he goes, you can always tell people that have that fire in their belly. They're always at search for hunger, and they're always curious, and just don't lose that. Have that fire in your belly. And he surrounded himself with people like that. And it was a great place to work. And there were people that were always great to work with. It was a great team. So yeah, it's a great thing.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I think that also like that's the perfect way for us to like end our like little session together too. Like with the advice that be curious and keep asking questions. And yeah, you have any last thoughts?
That's it. I thank you. It's been great to meet you, and I'm looking forward to learning more about you and having you come and join us at the Women in GIS chapter.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, thank you so much for being on the call with us today and sharing a little bit about your experience in GIS technology. Yeah, really appreciate it.